All right. The keys. The keys, okay? The adventure can be summarized in the following diagram. So this is basically the hero's journey right here. You got the call to adventure, then you meet the helper, then you got the threshold of adventure, and this is where most of the action is going on, right? You got the threshold crossing, the brother battle, the dragon battle, the dismemberment, crucifixion, abduction, night sea journey, wonder journey, whale's belly, which we went over in all of the previous chapters, okay? Then we got the tests to see if you're really ready. We got some more helpers. Then when we get to the bottom, which is like an anti-climax, or maybe a climax you could call it, just a regular climax. Then we got the sacred marriage. We got father atonement. We got apotheosis. And we got elixir theft. Okay, then we keep going. We're going back to the regular world, bro. This is the flight. This is where people just decide whether they want to bring the things that they learned in this whole part adventure, if they want to bring the things that they learned back, or if they're just going to be pussy and run, okay? Then we got right here the threshold, return, resurrection, rescue, threshold struggle. Then you get back into the world, and we got elixir, which would be just bestowing people the information that you've learned, the wisdom that you've learned, the powers that you learned, whatever it is. If you give the best head, you going around, you sharing that with the world or whatever. Okay, so that's basically the hero's journey. All right, it's basically the hero's journey. Now, what do they mean by the keys? Okay, let's go over it. Let's see what my son Joseph is talking about. All right, let's do it. The mythological hero setting forth from his common day hut or castle is lured, carried away, or else voluntarily proceeds to the threshold of adventure. There he encounters a shadow presence that guards the passage. The hero may defeat or conciliate this power and go alive into the kingdom of the dark, brother battle, dragon battle, offering, charm, or be slain by the opponent and descend in death, dismemberment / crucifixion. Beyond the threshold, then, the hero's journeys through a world of unfamiliar yet strangely intimate forces, some of which severely threaten him, some of which give him magical aid. When he arrives at the nadir of the mythological round, he undergoes a supreme ordeal and gains his reward. The triumph may be represented as the hero's sexual union with the goddess mother of the world, his recognition by the Father Creator, his own divinization, or again, if the powers have remained unfriendly to him, his theft of the boon he came to gain. Intrinsically, it is an expansion of consciousness and therewith of being. The final work is that of the return. If the powers have blessed the hero, he now sets forth under their protection. If not, he flees and is pursued. At the return threshold, the transcendental powers must remain behind. The hero reemerges from the kingdom of dread. The boon that he brings restores the world. Okay? So if we go back to this, it makes it a little bit more understanding. It's funny. It took 230 pages for him to just say this. All right? This conclusion, this is what you can go back to every time, and if you want to reference a specific part of the hero's journey, you just read this and it'll give you an idea of the specific part that you should be going to, right? So this is probably the best for referencing and all of that. The changes rung on the simple scale of the monomyth defy description. Many tales isolate and greatly enlarge upon one or two of the typical elements of the full cycle. Test motif, flight motif, abduction of the bride. Others string a number of independent cycles into a single series, as in the Odyssey. Different characters or episodes can become fused, or a single element can reduplicate itself and reappear under many changes. So he's basically talking about all of the references he uses and how they relate to the hero's journey. Some of them encapsulate the whole journey. Some of them say little parts of the journey, but they all have elements of that in them. The outlines of myths and tales are subject to damage and obscuration. Archaic traits are generally eliminated or subdued. Imported materials are revised to fit local landscape, custom, or belief, and always suffer in the process. Furthermore, in the innumerable retellings of a traditional story, accidental or intentional dislocations are inevitable. To account for elements that have become, for one reason or another, meaningless, secondary interpretations are invented, often with considerable skill. In the Eskimo story of Raven in the Belly of the Whale, the motif of the fire sticks has suffered a dislocation and subsequent rationalization. The archetype of the hero in the belly of the whale is widely known. The principal deed of the adventurer is usually to make fire with his fire sticks in the interior of the monster, thus bringing about the whale's death and his own release. Like Pinocchio. Fire making in this manner is symbolic of the sex act. The two sticks, socket stick and spindle, are known respectively as the female and male. The flame is the newly generated life. The hero making fire in the whale is a variant of the sacred marriage. But in our Eskimo story, this fire-making image underwent a modification. Let's change the category real quick. We're almost done though, I'm not even gonna lie. The female principal was personified in the beautiful girl whom Raven encountered in the great room within the animal. Meanwhile, the conjunction of male and female was symbolized separately in the flow of the oil from the pipe into the burning lamp. Raven's tasting of this oil was his participation in the act. The resultant cataclysm represented the typical crisis of the nadir, the termination of the old eon and initiation of the new. Raven's emergence then symbolized the miracle of rebirth. Thus, the original fire sticks having become superfluous, a clever and amusing epilogue was invented to give them a function in the plot. Having left the fire sticks in the belly of the whale, Raven was able to interpret their rediscovery as an ill luck omen, frighten the people away, and enjoy the blubber feast alone. This epilogue is an excellent example of secondary elaboration. It plays on the trickster character of the hero, but is not an element of the basic story. So he's basically talking about all the Star Wars spin-offs. He's talking about the Mandalorian. He's talking about the Clone Wars. He's talking about all that shit. The mainline Star Wars movies are the hero's journey. Or you could say 4, 5, and 6 are the hero's journey. Then you got 1, 2, and 3 are secondary elaborations. Sorry, 7, 8, and 9 are also secondary elaborations of the basic story as well. Okay? In the later stages of many mythologies, the key images hide like needles in great haystacks of secondary anecdote and rationalization. For when a civilization has passed from a mythological to a secular point of view, the older images are no longer felt or quite approved. In Hellenistic Greece and in imperial Rome, the ancient gods were reduced to mere civic patrons, household pets, and literary favorites. Uncomprehended inherited themes such as that of the Minotaur, the dark and terrible night aspect of an old Egypto-Cretan representation of the incarnate sun god and divine king, were rationalized and reinterpreted to suit contemporary ends. Mount Olympus became a riviera of trite scandals and affairs, and the mother goddess hysterical nymphs. The myths were read as superhuman romances. In China, comparably, where the humanistic moralizing force of Confucianism has fairly emptied the old myth forms of their primal grandeur, the official mythology is today a clutter of anecdotes about the sons and daughters of provincial officials who, for serving their community one way or another, were elevated by their grateful beneficiaries to the dignity of local gods. And in modern progressive Christianity, the Christ, incarnation of the Logos and Redeemer of the world, is primarily a historical personage, a harmless country wise man of the semi-oriental past who preaches a benign doctrine of do as you would be done by, yet was executed as a criminal. His death is read as a splendid lesson in integrity and fortitude. So they're basically saying the original purpose of all of these things has been redone, remade, whatever you want to call it, repurposed. Wherever the poetry of myth is interpreted as biography, history, or science, it is killed. Wherever the poetry of myth is interpreted as biography, history, or science, it is killed. Okay? That's interesting. The living images become only remote facts of a distant time or sky. Furthermore, it is never difficult to demonstrate that as science and history, mythology is absurd. When a civilization begins to reinterpret its mythology in this way, the life goes out of it. Temples become museums, and the link between the two perspectives is dissolved. Such a blight has certainly descended on the Bible and on a great part of the Christian cult. He calls it the Christian cult. Interesting. It's interesting. It is interesting. I'm not gonna lie. It's dead interesting because you guys, or if you don't know, my whole thing is definitely the breakdown between science and God, or you could say even metaphysics and science. I don't know if people even classify metaphysics as a science, but I guess it is technically. But the separation between that, where it was like, all right, I think the biggest divide was the scientific method, and once they dropped the scientific method, that stopped any kind of hope of these types of things being preserved in a real future sense, okay? Which is exactly what he's saying here. So, interesting. We agree, me and Joseph. To bring the images back to life, one has to seek not interesting applications to modern affairs, but illuminating hints from the inspired past. When these are found, vast areas of half-dead iconography disclose again their permanently human meaning. On Holy Saturday in the Catholic Church, for example, after the blessing of the new fire, the blessing of the Paschal candle, and the reading of the prophecies, the priest puts on a purple cope and, preceded by the processional cross, the candelabra, and the lighted blessed candle, goes to the baptismal font with his ministers and the clergy, while the following tract is sung. As the heart panteth after the mountains of water, so my soul panteth after thee, O God. When shall I come and appear before the face of God? My tears have been my bread day and night, while they say to me daily, where is thy God? That's what they be doing in the Catholic Church, or not? Psalm, 2-4. Oh, you like that one? You like that one? On arriving at the threshold of the baptistry, the priest pauses to offer up a prayer, then enters and blesses the water of the font. To the end that a heavenly offspring conceived by sanctification may emerge from the immaculate womb of the divine font, reborn new creatures, and that all, however distinguished either by sex and body or by age and time, may be brought forth to the same infancy by grace, their spiritual mother. He touches the water with his hand and prays that it may be cleansed of the malice of Satan, makes the sign of the cross over the water, divides the water with his hand, and throws some towards the four quarters of the world. Breathes thrice upon the water in the form of a cross, then dips the paschal candle in the water and intones, "May the virtue of the Holy Ghost descend into all the water of this font." He withdraws the candle, sinks it back again to the greater depth, and repeats in a higher tone, May the virtue of the Holy Ghost descend into all the water of this font. Again, he withdraws the candle, and for the third time sinks it to the bottom, repeating in a higher tone still, May the virtue of the Holy Ghost descend into all the water of this font. Then, breathing thrice upon the water, he goes, and make the whole substance of this water fruitful for regeneration. He then withdraws the candle. Why are they telling us this whole ritual, bro? I don't care. He then withdraws the candle from the water, and after a few concluding prayers, the assistant priest sprinkles the people with this blessed water. The female water, spiritually fructified with the male fire of the Holy Ghost, is the Christian counterpart of the water transformation known to all systems of mythological imagery. This rite is a variant of the sacred marriage, which is the source moment that generates and regenerates the world and man. Okay, so we got Joseph Campbell, we got Manly P. Hall, we got Carl Jung. Okay, and we got David Hawkins. The main thread between all these people is that they understand that spirituality starts in the metaphysical and then disseminates into the physical into hundreds of different forms. And this is the main point. This is the main point that we need to keep in mind over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? This is the main point. Spirituality, metaphysics comes from a non-physical place and it disseminates into the physical, which leads you to have all of these mythologies, all of these religions, science, all of these things, okay? Starts in the metaphysical and then it disseminates physically, okay? Okay, so that's the main, remember these names. And if we find anybody else, we find other people. But Jung, Joseph Campbell, David Hawkins, and Manly P. Hall. Okay, remember those people. You could even say, what's that people that the guy that people like? Alan Watts. You could even say Alan too. It is not difficult for the modern intellectual to concede that the symbolism of mythology has a psychological significance. Particularly after the work of the psychoanalysts, there can be little doubt either that myths are of the nature of dream or that dreams are symptomatic of the dynamics of the psyche. Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Wilhelm Schettel, Otto Rank, Carl Abraham, Geza Roheim, and many others have within the past few decades developed a vast documented modern lore of dream and myth interpretation. Yo, we in for a good one, chat. Nah. Tomorrow we in for a good one. Finally, bro. And it's crazy because I kept saying the word, what was the word I kept saying? Metaphysics. That's the word I kept saying. Look at the next chapter, from psychology to metaphysics. Everybody's talking about like conspiracy stuff. All the conspiracy theorists are proven right in 2026. But like, I just want y'all to remember, this is the main idea of Superb. This is the main idea of what I got going on. The main idea is literally the separation of science and I don't want to say spirituality. I feel like spirituality is just too like broad, but I'll just say spirituality. But the division of science and spirituality created a divide in the world where things are no longer real. Things are no longer true to the timeline that, or rather the paradigm that is ideal or that is real. What's that guy from that show where he has the board with all the conspiracy, like all the things on the board, and he's like, that's me. It's like that, okay? It's like that. There's so many reference points that all lead to the same thing, and that central point is consciousness. That central point is consciousness as a recordable and tangible thing, okay? So, very important. I'm very, 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 very excited for this, okay? Good shit.